Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us for this demo of LightStep XPM. My name is Dennis Chu from LightStep, and I'm the Director of Product Marketing. So today I want to show you a quick demo walkthrough of LightStep XPM, which is a platform to help organizations, especially those with complex distributed applications using microservices and serverless technologies, to visualize and understand their application performance and manage it. So the first thing you see here is the landing page for LightStep XPM. This is our service directory, and users who are first using or first looking at LightStep, this is typically the place where you will start to understand the services that are reporting into your application. So on the left here, you'll see a list of all of the services that you have. And this is helpful for most end users because typically from the organizations we see, individual engineers will have a few services that they're familiar with or that they're responsible for. So this is a great way for you to look at those that you care about because this list can be quite long, especially for some of our customers who have services in the hundreds, if not more. So as you can see here, I have a couple of services starred. I can always very easily add another one. To the left here, now this is where it gets very interesting in terms of managing your service performance, because at a glance, you can very easily see the specific operations that are tied to each of your services. We show you the operations, the ingress and the egress operations, and you can easily filter on both. So you can see what are these operations that are at the edge of your service. Then that gives you an ability to really hone in on the ones that you want to look into to see how you manage the upstream and downstream performance for your service. Now, just going back to the full view here, you'll notice on the right here, you can also select the different latency percentiles that you want to view, and also whether the changes from an hour ago, a day ago, or a week ago. So again, this makes it very simple for you to, at a glance, look at what has changed over time, so you can really focus on whether things have shifted or validate that some of the performance improvements you've made did in fact take place. So just scanning through this, immediately, let's say I'm responsible for the API server, or I deployed a recent change that I want to make sure didn't regress performance. So here, I want to look at the P99 percentile because typically speaking, when the P99 percentile is increasing, that latency, it could be kind of a leading indicator to let you know that things are starting to regress in a way that is not great. So here, let's sort by the latency change. I can see that in particular, the user space mapping and reserve asset operations are experiencing a latency shift. So now I can go directly from this high-level overview view of the services to what we call our Explorer view. And our Explorer view is really where you can start to look at the performance of your application in real time. And it gives you the flexibility to really dissect and look at any facet of your application. So one thing that I want to point out here is right now this latency histogram shows you, well, we sometimes like to say the shape of your performance for your application, because it shows you not just your performance as a singular number or time series, but it gives you this visualization that shows the distinct performance behaviors for any aspect of your application. One thing that I also want to point out that's quite unique with LightStep XPM is that we are collecting your performance and trace data completely unsampled. So we're looking at literally 100% of your traffic, and then we're giving you these performance insights by looking at the total trace and performance data that's flowing through your system. And this is quite unique from most most solutions out there, whether they're metrics or logs or other APM vendors, because many are not able to scale to the volume of data generated by these highly distributed, heterogeneous modern day applications, and especially agent-based solutions where they're competing against resources or they're running on the host themselves. This places a big burden to look at all the data, whereas our two-tiered architecture really enables organizations to look at all of their trace data, and this allows us, LightStep XPM, to really deliver quite unique insights because we're looking at such a rich set of information. Now, going back to our example here, once again, I see these two different performance characteristics for this very specific service and this specific operation within this service. Now, I can also shift the P99 to look at what's changed. As you can see, there's a bit of an increase in the latency from a P99 perspective. We even show you these overlays, if you will, that shows you what the performance is from an hour ago, a day ago, or a week ago. So you immediately can see that performance shift and focus on just the parts that has regressed. I can even narrow my view to look specifically at just these buckets of spans or these buckets of operations that fall within this outlying area. Now, one very unique thing about LightStep XPM is this idea of correlations. So that what's typical in many of these types of solutions is you often have to eyeball what you're seeing, whether it's a chart or it's time series or even just pages of logs. And this often can be quite challenging when you are faced with some firefighting situation where you're trying to understand why latency is spiking or why you're seeing errors in your application. So what's quite unique about LightStep XPM is we're not only gathering this rich volume of data, but we are in the background automatically calculating and looking at all the information that's being sent to LightStep to help you derive unique, to automatically derive unique insights that then allow you to have a starting point to either validate or kind of reject these hypotheses. But as you can see from here, within literally seconds, I can see that the performance is potentially impacting this specific customer BMO with this high positive correlation score. So anything with a high positive correlation score means that the performance that you see is likely tied or this customer tag appears frequently in this high latency bucket. One other thing I want to also point out is we have what we call our service diagram. So the service diagram is dynamic. It shows you the latency contributions and the upstream and downstream services connected to the specific query. So one of the things here is, especially if you're an engineer and you're just working on one or two services, this gives you that holistic view of your application. So even though you are responsible for one particular service, this view allows you to understand what are the dependencies that are affecting your application. So you can look at, is your service contributing to the latency upstream or downstream? Or if you're, in this case, for example, we're seeing increased latency, but we see one of the downstream services has some errors. So maybe this gives you a sense of what services may be contributing to the situation that you're observing. So why don't we start at why don't we go back to our previous example of the latency histogram? So one thing I also want to point out is we are gathering quite literally thousands of trace examples. So if you want to look at what these outlier traces look like, you simply can go and click on any one of these examples in that trace table, and we take you directly to these end-to-end traces for your application. So we're not only giving you that high-level view of what the performance looks like, whether what the situation looked like from an hour or day or week ago, but you can go from something that looks suspicious or something that looks interesting directly into this very rich end-to-end trace view, so you can see exactly what are the different operations or spans that make up this entire transaction. So you can walk up and down the stack, look at each of these, and see where the bottlenecks are. As you can see from this visualization, we also show you what the critical path is with this yellow line through each span that contributes to the critical path. Clearly, this one particular user space mapping operation, part of the API server service, is contributing to the majority of this particular P99 transactions overall latency. In fact, let's see, the total duration is about just under 5 seconds. So this is taking up more than 60% of the latency contribution. Actually, we even show you here in the additional details field. So in this view, some other quite interesting things that I want to point out is each of these spans, we associate very specific context or context-specific tags for each of these. So if you go up and down, for example, let's start to go down to this cache refresh. We have a few, these database queries. You'll notice that the tags are changing because they're specific to each of these operations, which gives you this very rich detail that tells you the complete story of what's actually going on. Underneath it, we also have what we call workflow links, and here you can actually give specific things that might be relevant that may not necessarily be contained within LightStep XPM itself. So you can tie it to things in your GitHub repos, and in this case, since this is tied to a specific customer, you can, for example, have your customer account page in your CRM, like Salesforce, for example, be tied directly, so you can just, within one click, go from this problematic span to see additional details about the particular customer that's being impacted in your CRM. So you can, for example, proactively reach out to your customer success team or see whether there are any additional deals that may be impacted, so you can prioritize these types of situations accordingly. We also noticed that perhaps this particular slowness may be from the traffic may be flowing through the US West 1 region of our hosted solution, so we can maybe go tie it to Twitter or whatever other status page you typically search to, so you can see the additional information directly from there. Lastly, in this page, I also want to point out that we can send structured log information. So this is a very powerful feature because, once again, these are very specific log messages that are tied to these particular operations. So you get that view immediately without having to switch over to your logging solution. So you see everything that is tied to this particular situation all in one view. Now, say we're concerned from this view that customer BMO may be impacted. Maybe you know that this customer is a high priority customer. So you can go from this view directly to these customizable dashboards. And within these dashboards, you can tie specific customer IDs to, and also like focus the view even more to, say, a specific service or a specific operation or even a specific combination of tags for this customer. So this is essentially a dashboard of different time series views, and you can use this to monitor essentially any facet of your application. So LightStep XPM has no limits on cardinality in terms of how granular you want to monitor your application. So you can really be very specific in this case. I mean, even if you have tens of thousands of customers or you want to monitor specific servers or hosts or geo regions, the sky is really the limit there. There's absolutely no restrictions on how granular you want to monitor your application. So we really tailor to any specific business needs. In this view, the first thing I might notice is for this customer, with the authentication service, it looks like it's experiencing a little over 2% errors, which is problematic in the sense that quite a large number of the requests for this customer is resulting in an error. So we can dive into this specific view to just see it in a higher resolution form. As you can see, when you hover over this time series view, a view that you may be familiar with from other, for example, metrics solutions, you can see that each of these dots represents a full end-to-end trace. You can click into any one of these at any point, and it'll take you directly to that trace example for this transaction at that point in time for the customer and for this operation. You'll notice that we capture just a huge representative set of these, from extreme outliers like this P99.994, essentially a 1 in 100,000 occurrence, to these extremely fast kind of like P like tens and P under examples, along with these errors. But this may be a difficult view to process, so you can even filter by the errors or percentiles, so you only see the examples that you care about at this time. One of the reasons why we're able to capture these extreme outliers, in this case an error example that is, again, one of these extreme P99.992, is because of our architecture that doesn't sample, which I mentioned earlier, because we're capturing or observing 100% of your trace data. Anytime there's something anomalous or concerning, we're able to capture it, whereas in solutions that do upfront sampling or even tail-based sampling, oftentimes you may not capture these with 100% fidelity. And when you're also sampling, one of the things that sometimes people don't realize is your percentile, your performance, your P99s and your P90s, your P50s, those percentile numbers are not reflective of your application's true performance, because it's only taking into account the data points that hasn't been sampled out, whereas ours accounts for all of your transactions. So we provide you the exact performance metrics that your application is experiencing at any given point in time. Now, we also understand that perhaps not everybody is looking at LightStep all the time. Most of our users, of course, have to write code and like write new features, fix bugs. So we also allow you to create notifications by signals, whether it's latency, error percentage, or operation rate. You can customize your threshold, and we have built-in integrations with PagerDuty, with Slack, or if you have your own alerting tool of choice, we also allow you to send these through custom webhooks. So this gives you just a very rich way of getting your information, and they're all tied back to LightStep. So when you get a Slack notification, for example, you can just go right into an example that exceeds the threshold for your alerting rule, and it'll once again bring you to these trace views that lets you diagnose the problem very easily. And really the last thing I want to talk about is when you go into the trace view, one thing that I haven't gone into too much yet is not only do we show you the view of your traces kind of from this organized by specific service and operation examples, which of course you can sort by the duration, so you can always jump to the slowest example. But we also, because of our correlations feature, where we show you the situations that are most likely to explain the performance slowdowns or the high latency that you're experiencing, you can very easily group by different tags or different service operation pairs with just one click in the correlations table. So for example, here I'm grouping by customer ID. So for all of my traces, now I can see in real time at this particular point in time what the latency is and the error percentage and also the throughput for all of my spans that are flowing through my application right now by customer ID. So this again is another view where just within seconds I can immediately see that BMO is experiencing abnormally high latency to give me that quick feedback on where I should focus my attention to. Now you can do the same, for example, by subnetwork. Since this is our demo environment, we only have 2. But again, you can see very quickly that US East 1 is performing quite well compared to US West 1. This is just a way for us to present the information to you in a way that makes sense or that is tied specifically to the situation that you're in right now. Finally, every time you run a query, the queries can be, as broad or as specific as you want. In this case, you can tie a specific tag with an operation, with a service. You'll notice that each query that's run is captured as a snapshot. So we show you the time that the snapshot was run or saved, and also what constitutes the specific snapshot. We have a running history of all of these, so you can always go back in time to a particular snapshot that was taken. In this case, this was a snapshot that was taken and saved just a few days ago, or last week rather, for customer ID BMO and the API service. You'll notice that this snapshot has a unique URL, so you can share this, you can send this to other teammates if this is something that you notice something interesting here, but this may not be a service that you're responsible for. You can just send this snapshot over to the responsible team, and they'll see exactly the same view with all of the thousands of traces from that period in time. And this is great for collaboration across teams. This is a great way for bringing other folks who are just joining the on-call if something is If something is amiss on call, if there's an outage, this is a great way to bring other teammates up to speed quickly after you've done the initial triage or investigation. And finally, also, this really helps from a post-mortem perspective. If you forget to take notes on what was actually happening, well, LightStep XPM captures all this information automatically as you're investigating, as you're firefighting. So you never have to remember to take notes, and this is a great way for you to just look back at what happened at that time, making the post-mortem process much easier. So that's it. That's the conclusion for this high-level overview of LightStep XPM. I hope you all found it helpful, and we'd certainly love to hear from all of you. So please visit us on our website at lightstep.com, and you can create a free account to try LightStep XPM on your own. Thanks.